Now that we're done with our CSS, we're going to move on to test our JavaScript. So if we go back to our code, we are going to go into our script.js file, and we're going to use something called console logging. So I'm not going to get too deep into an explanation on this, but basically our browser window is represented by something called our window. And within our window, we have something called a console. And this allows us to log certain data that we can then see from our JavaScript in our browser. So this is helpful if we are calling an API and we want to just see how the data is formatted. We can console log that data and pass it into our browser. So we actually don't need to type out window.console because by default, all JavaScript is in the window element. So we're going to write out console.log and then brackets. And then in single quotes, we can pass in a string, or if you're passing in a variable, you would pass it in without the quotes. But in our case, we just want to write testing. And then we'll throw in a semicolon at the end. So we can save that and jump back to our browser. And so where this is going to show up is in our dev tools. So our dev tools is something I'm going to reference many times throughout the course. To get to our dev tools, we can right click and inspect. And you can see that our dev tools is opened up here. By default, it will open on elements. So you can see that we have our HTML here, and we actually have our CSS here as well. We have our margin 0 and our min height of 100. The cool thing is this actually allows us to turn our styling on and off and test out different things. So if I wanted to test out a background color on our body, I can just type in whatever I want and it will update in real time. And if I wanted to just get rid of something, I can just uncheck it to get rid of it. You can see next to it that we have our console. And you can see here that we have testing showing up. So this means our console log is working, and it means our JavaScript is connected to our HTML. Perfect. Throughout the course, we're going to learn more about different things here. So we're also going to learn about the network tab. If we refresh the page, we can see that it actually shows which files are loading. So we have our index.html, how long they take, the size of them, what order they're loading, and more information, but those are the basics. And the other thing is our application tab. As you can see, this is from a project within the course. We're actually saving bookmarks into our local storage, but we'll get to that later in the course. The important thing is everything is working as we want it to. So let's jump back to the code, and we're going to get rid of this and save it. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to actually host your project online for free using GitHub. So if we jump back to GitHub here, we're going to create a new repository, and we're going to give it a name, template-test. And we're not going to worry about a description, and we're not going to worry about a README. We're going to click Create Repository. Then we're going to copy this here. This is the remote that we want to add. And we're going to jump back to our code, and we're going to open up our terminal. If you remember, we're going to start with our git init. It's going to initialize an empty repository within our folder. We are going to add the remote origin, so git remote add origin, and then we're going to paste that in. Then we're going to do git add space and then period, because that's going to add everything. And then git commit -m, and then we're going to type in a message. This will be our initial commit. And you can see that there are some changes here, and it shows the 3 files that are going to be added. And then lastly, we're going to git push origin master. Okay, so that's done now. If we jump back over and we refresh, we can see that we have our 3 files here now. And so that's how the process would work if you're setting up a project for the first time. But let's say that we made a change in our index.html. We can move this down a little bit. And let's say we're just going to add an H1 tab, and we're just going to have it say, hello world. Let's save that. And now we can open up another terminal. And so anytime you make changes to a project, you're going to save the file. And then we only have to type in 3 commands. So I'm going to type in git add and then period. That's going to add everything that's been changed. And then I'm going to go git commit -m. And then I'm going to add my commit message. So I'm just going to add hello world. And then you can see I've only changed 1 file, our HTML file. And then I'm going to do git push origin master. Okay, so that's done. I can jump back to my repo. If I refresh the page, I can see now that I have my hello world commit. Now I can scroll back up to the top, So we're going to scroll over. I'm very zoomed in here, but for you, you'll be able to probably see this whole page. We're going to go to the right, and we're going to click on Settings. And we're going to scroll down in our settings until we find GitHub Pages. So this is designed to host your project pages. And what we're going to do is we're just going to switch the source from none to master branch. And you can see that the page source has been saved. And if we scroll down again, we can actually see that now we have a website where our project is going to be live. So we can right-click and open this in a new tab. So you can see right now that the site is not found. So something to keep in mind when you're using GitHub Pages, when you enable it for the first time, it'll take about 10 minutes. So let's wait for 10 minutes and come back. Alrighty, so I've come back 10 minutes later and I've refreshed the page, and you can see now we have our title, we have our favicon, and we have our Hello World H1. Excellent. This is the process you can use going forward over and over again anytime you want to share your projects online with people for free. You can start with the template I've created here, create and initialize a Git repository, push the changes to the terminal in Visual Studio Code, and then update them as you work on the project. Lastly, don't forget in your settings that you want to enable GitHub Pages, and you want to have the source be the master or main branch. That's about it. That's all there is to hosting. So I'm going to remove the H1 from this template because, again, we want it to be as blank as possible. That's the version I'm going to save in the course. But that's about it for our setup. I think we're finally ready to get started with the course and the rest of the projects. All right. I'll see you in the next project. Bye for now.